Christian gripped the steering wheel tighter as the red and blue lights flashed in his rearview mirror. "Just our luck," he muttered to Alexis, whose hand was still resting on his thigh, the warmth a stark contrast to the cold dread settling in his stomach. The officer approached with a flashlight, his face twisting into a sneer when he saw the two men. "You boys need to step out of the car," he barked, his tone dripping with disgust at their obvious closeness. But as Christian handed over his ID, the officer's eyes widened in disbelief, his partner freezing mid-step. The badge glinted under the streetlights, and suddenly the air shifted from hostility to stunned silence. Christian was no ordinary driver. He was Special Agent Christian Reyes, FBI, and the very system these cops represented had just been flipped on its head. The night air in downtown Chicago felt heavier than usual as Christian stood beside the black SUV, arms crossed, watching the two officers fumble through apologies. Alexis stayed quiet in the passenger seat, his dark eyes reflecting a mix of relief and lingering frustration. They had been on their way back from a quiet dinner, the kind of evening they stole whenever Christian's undercover schedule allowed it. For 3 years now, their relationship had been the one steady anchor in Christian's chaotic world of stakeouts and classified files. Alexis, a graphic designer with a gentle laugh and unshakable optimism, had become everything Christian never knew he needed. Yet moments like this reminded him how fragile that anchor could feel in a world that still saw two men holding hands as a threat. As the officers drove away with awkward nods, Christian slid back behind the wheel and let out a long breath. "You okay?" Alexis asked softly, reaching over to squeeze his shoulder. Christian nodded, but inside the familiar storm raged. At 34, he had risen through the ranks at the bureau faster than most, earning respect for his sharp instincts and calm under pressure. No one there knew the real him, the man who came home to Alexis's apartment in Logan Square, cooked pasta on Sunday nights, and sometimes woke up tangled in sheets with a smile he couldn't hide, revealing that truth could end everything he had built. The bureau's culture had evolved on paper, but the whispers in the break room and the sidelong glances during team briefings told a different story. They drove in silence for a few blocks before Alexis spoke again. "You didn't have to flash the badge, you know. I could have handled it." Christian glanced at him, the city lights painting soft shadows across his boyfriend's face. "And let him keep talking to you like that? No way." The memory of the officer's sneer burned fresh. It wasn't the first time prejudice had slapped them in the face, but tonight it hit harder because it came right after Christian had spent the day testifying in a federal case involving hate crimes. Irony had a cruel sense of timing. Back at the apartment, Christian poured 2 glasses of wine while Alexis dimmed the lights. They settled on the couch, the tension slowly melting away as they talked about everything and nothing. Alexis shared stories from his latest project, a campaign for an LGBTQ youth center, his passion lighting up the room. Christian listened, marveling at how freely Alexis moved through the world. Growing up in a supportive California family, Alexis had never needed to hide. Christian, raised in a conservative Texas household where football and faith were gospel, had learned early that some truths were safer buried deep. That night, as Alexis fell asleep with his head on Christian's chest, the weight of the evening pressed down. Christian stared at the ceiling, replaying the traffic stop. The officer's shock when the federal credentials appeared had been satisfying, but it also highlighted the double life he was leading. How long could he keep pretending at work while building a real future with the man he loved? The question followed him into uneasy dreams, setting the stage for the cracks that would soon widen into something impossible to ignore. The next morning brought the usual routine. Christian kissed Alexis goodbye at the door before heading to the field office, badge clipped to his belt like armor. His partner on the current case, Agent Marcus Hale, greeted him with the usual gruff nod. They were tracking a money laundering ring with ties to extremist groups, the kind of assignment that demanded total focus. During the briefing, the team reviewed surveillance photos, voices overlapping in the dim room. Christian contributed sharply, earning approving glances. No one suspected the man who had just dismantled a suspect's alibi was the same one pulled over for simply being himself the night before. Yet as the day wore on, small moments chipped at his resolve. Marcus made an offhand joke about those rainbow types causing trouble downtown, and the room chuckled. Christian forced a smile, the familiar knot tightening in his gut. He had heard worse, laughed along to worse, all to keep his secret safe. But after last night, the laughter felt heavier. By evening, when he met Alexis for a walk along the lakefront, the contrast hit him full force. Here, with the wind off Lake Michigan ruffling their hair, they could hold hands without glancing over their shoulders. Alexis squeezed his fingers. "You're quiet today," Christian shrugged. "Just thinking about how different things could be if I didn't have to hide." Alexis stopped walking, turning to face him under the golden sunset. "Then don't. Not forever." The words lingered like a promise and a challenge all at once. Christian knew the conversation was coming, the one they had danced around for months. His promotion to senior agent loomed, bringing more scrutiny, more travel. Alexis wanted stability, a life where they could visit each other's families without rehearsed stories. Christian wanted that too, but fear held him back. Fear of losing the career he had sacrificed so much for, fear of his father's disappointed silence, fear that the world might not be ready for a gay federal agent who refused to apologize for loving another man. As they continued their walk, Christian felt the first real stirrings of change. The traffic stop had been a shock, but it was also a mirror. For the first time, he saw clearly how much his secrecy cost not just him, but Alexis too. The emotional journey ahead would test every part of him, forcing choices between duty and desire, silence and truth. Little did he know, the real test was only beginning. Weeks blurred into a tense rhythm after the traffic stop. Christian threw himself deeper into the money laundering case, chasing leads across Illinois and into Indiana. Late nights at the office became his shield, but the distance only amplified the quiet strain with Alexis. They still shared dinners and lazy Sundays, yet conversations now carried an undercurrent of unspoken questions. Alexis never pushed, but Christian felt the weight of every avoided glance. Every time he changed the subject when Alexis mentioned meeting his parents. One crisp October weekend, Christian flew to Texas for his sister's engagement party. The family ranch outside Austin looked the same as always, golden fields stretching under a wide sky. His mother hugged him tight at the airport, smelling of lavender and home cooking. His father clapped him on the back with a proud grin. "Heard you're up for another promotion, son. Making us all look good." Christian smiled through the familiar ache. They had no idea the son they raised to be strong and honorable was in love with a man named Alexis who made him feel more alive than any badge ever could. The party was a whirlwind of relatives and neighbors, country music drifting from the barn. Christian played the role perfectly, laughing at old stories, dancing with cousins. But when his mother asked if he was seeing anyone special, the lie slipped out smooth as ever. "Too busy with work, Mom." She patted his arm, eyes full of understanding that missed the mark entirely. Later that night, alone in his childhood bedroom, Christian pulled out his phone. Alexis had sent a photo from Chicago, him smiling on their balcony with 2 coffees. The caption read, "Missing my favorite federal agent." Christian stared at the screen until the words blurred. The double life was cracking him open. Back in Chicago, the case heated up. A key witness agreed to testify, but only if Christian handled the protection detail personally. The safe house was a nondescript apartment in a quiet suburb. Nights stretched long as Christian and Marcus rotated shifts. During one quiet evening, Marcus opened up about his own life, talking about his wife and kids, the sacrifices of the job. Christian listened, nodding, feeling the invisible wall between them grow taller. When Marcus asked about his personal life, Christian deflected with a joke about bad coffee dates. The lie tasted bitter now. Alexis sensed the shift when Christian returned from Texas. Over a quiet dinner of Thai takeout, he finally voiced what had been simmering. "I love you, Christian, but I'm tired of being the secret. Your family deserves to know who you really are. I deserve to stand beside you without hiding." Christian set down his fork, heart pounding. "It's not that simple. The bureau, my dad, one wrong move and everything I've worked for disappears." Alexis reached across the table, his touch steady. And what about us? Do we disappear too? The question hung between them, raw and honest. The argument that followed was the first real one they had ever had. Voices rose, not in anger but in pain. Christian accused Alexis of not understanding the pressure. Alexis countered that hiding was slowly killing the man he fell in love with. In the end, they fell asleep on opposite sides of the bed, the space between them feeling like miles. Christian lay awake, replaying every milestone. Meeting Alexis at a downtown coffee shop 3 years earlier, when a spilled latte led to laughter and phone numbers exchanged. Their first date at the Art Institute, where Alexis's passion for color and light had drawn Christian out of his guarded shell. The night Christian first whispered, "I love you," under the stars at Navy Pier. Each memory now carried the sting of what he risked losing. Morning brought no easy answers, but it brought clarity. Christian called in a personal day, something he rarely did. He and Alexis drove north to a small cabin they had rented once before on the Wisconsin border. The fall leaves blazed red and gold around them as they hiked a quiet trail. No phones, no cases, just the two of them. Halfway up a ridge, Christian stopped, turning to face Alexis. "I'm scared," he admitted, voice rough. "Scared that if I come out, I lose everything I thought defined me." Alexis pulled him close, foreheads touching. "You define you, Christian, not the badge, not your father's expectations. The man I love is brave enough to face whatever comes next." That weekend marked a turning point. They talked for hours, mapping out possibilities. Christian began imagining a life where he didn't have to edit every story. Alexis shared his own fears of becoming a burden. By Sunday night, driving back to Chicago, Christian felt lighter than he had in months. The emotional walls he had built since college started to show hairline fractures. Yet the real world waited, and the case demanded his full attention again. Back at the office, a new development hit like a freight train. The money laundering ring had connections to a prominent Chicago politician who was rumored to fund anti-LGBTQ initiatives. Christian's team was tasked with digging deeper. During a late strategy session, Marcus made another casual remark about those activists stirring trouble. This time, Christian didn't laugh. He met Marcus's eyes and said quietly, "People have the right to live without fear, man." The room went still for a beat. Marcus shrugged it off, but Christian felt the shift inside himself. Small steps, maybe, but they were his. That evening, Alexis greeted him at the door with a homemade meal and a knowing smile. "You look different." Christian pulled him into a long hug. "I think I'm starting to figure out who I want to be." The words felt true. The journey toward honesty had begun. But Christian had no idea how quickly the path would narrow and the stakes would rise higher than he ever imagined. The weeks following the cabin trip brought a fragile peace. Christian and Alexis settled into a new rhythm, small gestures replacing the heavy silences. Christian started leaving little notes on the kitchen counter before heading to work, and Alexis surprised him with tickets to a quiet jazz show downtown. Yet the case consumed more and more of Christian's time. The politician at the center of the investigation turned out to be Senator Harlan Graves, a man whose public speeches often targeted moral decay in cities like Chicago. The irony wasn't lost on Christian. Every late night poring over financial records felt like staring into a mirror of his own hidden life. One afternoon, Marcus pulled Christian aside after a briefing. "You've been off lately. Everything good at home?" The question caught Christian off guard. For a split second, he considered telling the truth. Instead, he deflected with a tired smile. "Just the usual grind." Marcus nodded, but his eyes lingered a moment too long. Christian wondered how much longer he could keep the act going. That night, over dinner, he told Alexis about the conversation. "Maybe it's time to test the waters at work," Alexis suggested gently. Christian shook his head. "Not yet. One wrong word and I'm off the case. Or worse." The fear was real. The Bureau had policies, but enforcement depended on people, and not everyone was ready for a gay agent in high-stakes operations. The following weekend brought an unexpected visit from Christian's best friend from college, Jake Thompson. Jake, now a lawyer in New York, flew in for a conference and crashed on their couch. The three of them spent Saturday exploring the city, laughing over old stories. Jake had always been the easygoing one, the guy who accepted everyone without question. But when Alexis casually mentioned their 3-year anniversary during dinner, Jake's fork paused midair. "Wait, you two are together?" The surprise in his voice stung more than Christian expected. Jake recovered quickly, offering a genuine smile and a toast. "Man, I had no idea. Good for you." Yet the moment left a crack. Later, when Alexis stepped out for a call, Jake pulled Christian aside. "Why didn't you ever say anything? I'm your friend, dude." Christian's explanation about the job and family felt hollow even to his own ears. Jake didn't push, but the easy camaraderie shifted into careful politeness. The misunderstanding lingered like smoke. Christian replayed the conversation on his morning run the next day, feet pounding the lake path. He had always counted on Jake as the one person who would never judge. Now even that felt uncertain. Back home, Alexis noticed the tension immediately. "He'll come around," he said, wrapping his arms around Christian from behind. "But you can't keep waiting for everyone else to be ready." The words hit home. Christian realized the emotional journey wasn't just about coming out to family or colleagues. It was about learning to stop waiting for permission to live fully. Monday brought the case to a boiling point. The team received credible intel that Senator Graves would attend a private fundraiser at a downtown hotel. Christian volunteered for the surveillance detail, hoping the night would yield the break they needed. Dressed in a crisp suit, he blended into the crowd of donors and lobbyists. From his post near the bar, he watched Graves shake hands and smile for cameras. The senator's speech that evening praised traditional values, drawing thunderous applause. Christian's jaw tightened. He thought of the young people Alexis worked with at the youth center, kids who faced rejection daily because of who they loved. The hypocrisy burned. During a quiet moment in the hallway, Christian's earpiece crackled with Marcus's voice. "Reyes, we've got movement on the east exit. Need eyes." Christian moved swiftly, slipping through service doors. What he saw stopped him cold. One of Graves' aides was handing off a thick envelope to a known associate from the laundering ring. Christian captured clear photos on his phone, heart racing. This was the evidence they had been chasing. But as he backed away, his foot caught a loose tile. The noise was slight, yet the aide turned. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second before Christian melted back into the shadows. The next morning, the team celebrated the breakthrough. Marcus clapped Christian on the back. "Nice work last night. You're a ghost, man." Christian smiled, but inside the victory felt hollow. He had risked everything for the job, yet the personal cost was mounting. That afternoon, he received a text from Jake. "Hey, sorry if I came off weird. Proud of you. Let's grab a beer next time I'm in town." The message should have brought relief, but it only highlighted how many relationships he had kept at arm's length. Driving home that evening, Christian made a decision. He would tell his parents during Christmas. Not the whole bureau yet, but a start. Alexis greeted him at the door with a kiss that lingered. "Rough day." Christian shook his head, pulling him closer. "Better now." They spent the evening planning a small getaway for Thanksgiving, just the two of them in a cabin up north. For the first time in months, Christian allowed himself to imagine a future where secrets didn't define him. The road ahead still looked uncertain, but the internal storm was beginning to settle into something resembling hope. Yet even as hope grew, external pressures mounted. A new directive came down from headquarters. All agents on high-profile cases needed updated psychological evaluations. Christian knew what that meant. Deeper questions, more scrutiny. The thought kept him awake that night, staring at the ceiling while Alexis slept peacefully beside him. The journey of growth demanded more than quiet courage now. It demanded action, and Christian wondered if he was truly ready to take the next step. Thanksgiving arrived with a blanket of early snow across Chicago. Christian and Alexis escaped to the Wisconsin cabin as planned, the world outside reduced to crackling fires and quiet mornings. For 4 days, they cooked together, hiked through pine forests, and talked about everything except the case. Alexis sketched by the window while Christian read case files he had promised to leave behind. The peace felt healing, yet Christian carried the weight of his upcoming conversation with his parents. He rehearsed the words in his head during long walks, imagining his father's face, his mother's tears. Alexis offered quiet support, never demanding, simply present. The return to Chicago brought immediate turbulence. The Graves investigation had leaked to the press, and the senator's team was fighting back hard. Internal Affairs started asking questions about how the team obtained certain evidence. Christian's name stayed out of it, but the pressure cooker atmosphere at the office thickened. Marcus grew short-tempered, snapping during briefings. One afternoon, he cornered Christian in the break room. "You holding something back, Reyes? Because if this blows up, we all go down." The accusation stung. Christian met his gaze steadily. "I'm doing my job, same as always." But the seed of doubt had been planted. Was his distraction showing? The silence that followed stretched painfully. His mother's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, honey," his father's face hardened, the lines around his mouth deepening. "Son, we raised you better than this." The words landed like blows. Christian tried to explain, voice steady despite the shaking inside. Alexis remained calm, offering a small wave when introduced. But the damage was immediate. His father ended the call abruptly, muttering about needing time. Christian sat frozen long after the screen went dark. Alexis pulled him into his arms without a word. The rejection hurt more than Christian had anticipated, cracking open old wounds from childhood sermons and locker room taunts. Work offered no escape. The next day, Senator Graves' lawyers filed complaints, demanding the names of all agents involved. Christian's supervisor called him in for a private meeting. "You've been solid on this case, Reyes, but if there's any personal baggage affecting your judgment, now's the time to say so." Christian assured him everything was fine, but the conversation left him rattled. That evening, he and Alexis argued for the second time. Alexis wanted to fly to Texas, confront the situation together. Christian refused, fearing it would make things worse. "You don't understand what my father is like," he snapped. Alexis's response was quiet but firm. "I understand what it's like to love someone who's afraid to love me back fully." The words cut deep. They slept apart again, the emotional distance wider than ever. Christmas loomed like a storm cloud. Christian buried himself in work, volunteering for extra shifts. Marcus noticed the change and pulled him aside one night after a long stakeout. "Look, I don't know what's going on with you, but you're one of the best agents I've worked with. Don't let whatever this is derail you." The unexpected support caught Christian off guard. For a moment, he considered opening up. Instead, he thanked Marcus and changed the subject. The betrayal of his own silence felt heavier than any external judgment. On Christmas Eve, Alexis surprised him with a small gift, a custom keychain engraved with their initials and the date they met. "No pressure," he said softly. "Just a reminder that you're not alone." Christian held the gift tightly, tears threatening for the first time in years. That night, they talked until dawn. Christian admitted the fear wasn't just about his career or family. It was about losing the version of himself he had constructed to survive. Alexis listened, then shared his own story of coming out at 16 and the years it took his extended family to accept him. "It hurt," he said, "but the freedom on the other side was worth every tear." The conversation marked another turning point. Christian decided to request a transfer to a less high-profile unit after the Graves case closed. It wasn't running away. It was choosing balance. He also booked tickets for both of them to visit his parents in January, determined to face the conversation in person. The internal crisis had forced him to confront truths he had long avoided. Growth wasn't linear or painless, but it was happening. As snow fell softly outside their window on Christmas morning, Christian held Alexis close and whispered the words he had been holding back. "I'm ready to fight for us. All the way." The promise felt real, yet the coming months would test whether that fight was enough. January brought bitter cold and a breakthrough in the case. Senator Graves agreed to a closed-door meeting with federal prosecutors, hoping to cut a deal. Christian's team prepared meticulously, reviewing every piece of evidence. On the morning of the meeting, Christian woke to a text from his mother. "We'll listen when you come home, son. Love you." The simple words carried more weight than any apology. He showed the message to Alexis, who smiled softly. See? Steps. The optimism was contagious, yet Christian's nerves remained raw. The meeting at the federal building was tense. Graves arrived flanked by lawyers, his usual charm replaced by barely contained anger. Christian sat in the observation room, watching through the one-way glass as the prosecutor laid out the charges. When the senator's eyes flickered toward the glass, Christian felt exposed even though he knew the man couldn't see him. Hours later, Graves signed the agreement, but not before making one last statement. This city is rotting from the inside. People like you are part of the problem. The words were aimed at the room, but they landed squarely on Christian's chest. That afternoon, Marcus invited the team for drinks to celebrate. At the bar, conversation flowed easily until one agent made a crude joke about Graves' family values speech. Laughter erupted, but Christian stayed quiet. Marcus noticed. You good, Reyes? The question hung in the air. This time, Christian didn't deflect. Actually, no. I'm gay. Been with my partner for 3 years. And I'm tired of pretending it doesn't matter. The table fell silent. Marcus stared for a long moment, then raised his glass. Well, damn. To honesty. One by one, the others followed, some awkward, some genuine. The relief that washed over Christian was immediate and overwhelming. No firing, no backlash. Just quiet acceptance from the men he had fought beside for years. The high didn't last. 2 days later, Internal Affairs opened a formal review of the surveillance operation, citing possible personal bias after an anonymous tip. Christian knew exactly where it came from. One of the junior agents who had laughed loudest at the bar had always been vocal about traditional marriage. The betrayal cut deep. Christian spent hours in his supervisor's office explaining every decision, every late night. Alexis waited at home with dinner and patience, but the strain showed in both of them. We'll get through this, Alexis kept saying. Christian wanted to believe him. The review dragged on for weeks. Christian was placed on administrative leave, forced to watch from the sidelines as the case moved toward trial. The downtime forced him to confront the deeper questions. Who was he without the badge? Without the constant adrenaline? He started volunteering at the youth center with Alexis, mentoring teenagers navigating their own identities. The work grounded him in ways the Bureau never could. One evening, a 16-year-old boy shared his fear of coming out to his conservative parents. Christian listened, then told him simply, "It's okay to be scared. Just don't let fear make your choices for you." The words echoed back at him. In late February, the Internal Affairs report cleared him completely. No evidence of misconduct, only praise for his dedication. Christian returned to the office to a standing ovation from his team. Marcus pulled him into a rough hug. "You're one of us, Reyes. Always were." The moment felt like a victory, yet Christian knew the real battle was personal. He booked the flights to Texas for the following weekend. Alexis insisted on coming. "We do this together or not at all." The flight to Austin felt endless. Christian's hand stayed locked with Alexis's the entire way. At the ranch, his mother greeted them at the door with tears and open arms. His father stood on the porch, arms crossed, face unreadable. The first evening was awkward, filled with small talk about the weather and work. After dinner, Christian asked for a private moment with his dad. They walked out to the barn under a clear night sky. "I'm still your son," Christian said quietly. "The man you taught to stand up for what's right. That hasn't changed." His father stared at the stars for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. "I don't understand it, Chris, but I'm trying. For you." It wasn't full acceptance, but it was a beginning. That night, lying in the guest room with Alexis, Christian felt the last heavy chain around his heart loosen. The sacrifice of his secrecy had been necessary for survival, but the reward of honesty was freedom. The emotional journey had taken him through fear, betrayal, and doubt. Yet every step had led here, to a place where he could finally breathe. Spring arrived in Chicago with blooming tulips and longer days. Christian returned to full duty with a new assignment, mentoring new agents on undercover protocols. The work felt different now, lighter. He no longer carried the constant fear of exposure. Marcus became a surprising ally, asking thoughtful questions about Christian's life with Alexis during their runs together. The friendship that grew from that honesty strengthened the entire team. At home, life settled into a rhythm of shared routines and quiet joys. Alexis finished his campaign for the youth center, and Christian attended the grand opening, standing proudly beside him as cameras flashed. No more hiding in the back row. When Alexis's family visited from California, the two couples spent a weekend exploring the city, laughter echoing through museums and restaurants. Christian watched Alexis with his parents, the easy affection a model for what he hoped to build with his own family. In May, Christian received an unexpected call from his father. "Your mother and I want to meet Alexis properly. Come home for the 4th of July. The invitation carried no conditions, just genuine effort. Christian accepted, tears pricking his eyes as he hung up. That evening, he and Alexis sat on their balcony watching the sunset. "We made it," Christian said softly. Alexis smiled, resting his head on Christian's shoulder. "We're just getting started." The summer unfolded with small victories. Christian spoke at an internal bureau diversity training, sharing his story without hesitation. The room listened in respectful silence, and several agents approached afterward with their own quiet confessions. The ripple effect surprised him. Change, he realized, often started with one voice willing to be heard. On a warm August evening, Christian and Alexis drove to the same lakefront spot where their serious conversations had begun months earlier. The city lights sparkled across the water as they walked hand in hand. Christian stopped under a street lamp, turning to face the man who had walked every step of the journey with him. "I used to think loving you meant risking everything I had built. Now I know it was the only thing worth building." He dropped to one knee, pulling a simple silver band from his pocket. "Alexis Rivera, will you marry me?" Alexis's answer came through happy tears as he pulled Christian up into a fierce embrace. The kiss that followed tasted of salt and promise, the city celebrating around them. They celebrated quietly with close friends and family over the following weeks. Christian's parents flew in for a small dinner, his father shaking Alexis's hand with a tentative but sincere smile. The moment wasn't perfect, but it was real. Christian had learned that growth wasn't about erasing fear. It was about moving forward anyway. As autumn leaves began to turn once more, Christian stood on their balcony overlooking the city that had witnessed every high and low. Alexis joined him, arms wrapping around his waist. Together they watched the sunset paint the sky in vibrant colors, the future stretching bright and open before them. The journey had been long, filled with confrontation and misunderstanding, sacrifice and awakening. Yet every choice had led them here, to a love strong enough to withstand the world's judgment and emerge even stronger. True or false? True love always requires risking everything you thought defined you in order to become the person you were meant to be.